Okay, here we have a 2002 Mustang GT, and I'm making a video here on how to replace your lower ball joint. You only have one ball joint in the front here. The suspension is a strut suspension. So you have the strut is what holds the top of the steering spindle or steering hub, and the bottom is held by the control arm and the ball joint, and of course you have a coil spring. All right, so again, this is a 2002 Mustang GT. Would be the same from I believe it's I'm not sure, I think 99 to 2004 is going to have the same setup on a GT, Mustang GT. Again, I'm not sure if the six-cylinder Mustang's the same. It may be, it might not be. But in any case, here you go. The reason why I'm making this video is because in the factory manual, they tell you to remove the lower control arm and replace the whole assembly. They don't go into replacing the ball joint. Haynes manual tells you to remove the lower control arm, take the control arm to a machinist, and have them press in a new ball joint. The problem with either one of those things is it just takes longer, and also you can't, you get whatever. If you take the machinist, you can get a good ball joint. If you just get the a new control arm, it's whatever ball joint they have in there. And also this way is faster, just replacing the ball joint. And on top of that, again, another thing that saves you time is you won't have to realign the car. If your alignment was okay, your alignment will be just as good as it was, if not better, when you're done, because the ball joint won't be as worn. It'll be brand new. In my case, the ball joint itself wasn't actually bad. What it was is the boot, and here's the old ball joint. That's a new ball joint in there, by the way. The old ball joint right here is actually okay, but the reason why I'm replacing it was because the boot was ripped, and it's just a matter of time before it does wear out. So this is preemptive maintenance. It has no grease fitting, so you can't add any more grease. If it did have a grease fitting, perhaps I would have replaced the boot and just greased it up and be good, or even not even bother replacing the boot, just grease it up, and that would extend its life. If you added grease periodically to it, like every few months, you'd probably, and you'd also be able to keep an eye on it, so it would definitely extend its life. It all depends. But in this case, I don't want to have to deal with it again. I only have to grease it every 6 months or so with the new ball joint, because it does have a grease fitting. It's a Moog, so it's a better ball joint. As you can see, this ball joint, here you can see the ball there of the joint, and then we can look at the Moog, and you can see the ball is actually, I can't get both of them together at the same time, or can I? And that's such a good view. But trust me, the Moog has a bigger ball. So it's a more heavy-duty ball joint. You can see the tapered shaft continues all the way to the ball, whereas the tapered shaft here on the OEM has like a groove where it meets the ball, so it's a weaker ball joint. So all in all, the Moog is a far superior ball joint. And one of the biggest things of pluses to it is it does have a grease fitting. If I were to show you, it's underneath here. Its grease fitting on the Moog is on the bottom. As a matter of fact, I do have a Moog. Here's the Moog ball joint for the other side. There you go. There's the grease fitting. As you can see now, actually I can give you a side-by-side comparison of the two. There you go. All right. As you can see, yes, it doesn't look like it's the same part, but yes, it does fit. It's the same thread, same taper. It just has a much heavier duty body, same OD. But the bottom section, the part that extends below the control arm, is much deeper. Here it is where it presses in, if I put them equal. So it extends that much further below the control arm. As you can see, it's a much heavier duty ball joint. Okay, so right there, for some guys, that's reason enough to replace it. But anyway, the thing is, my reason for replacing it is, first of all, even if it did have a grease fitting, it's hard to get a new boot. You'd probably have to buy another OEM ball joint, take that boot off, and and whatnot, and then and who knows, I mean, yeah, it's serviceable, but it's still an old ball joint. It still has. This car has like 160,000 miles on it, so it still is a ball joint with 160,000. So I'm replacing it. There you go, and it is. There it is. It's it. All right, let's get past that segue and let's just go to the meat of it here. In order to get to this point, you need to remove the caliper, and as you see, the caliper's been removed, and remove the tie rod end. Now, when you remove the tie rod end, you want to use a tool like this, because you don't want to damage the boot on the tie rod end. And I'm not a big fan of, you could just whack it with a hammer, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm not a big fan of whacking the steering knuckle with a hammer. I mean, I don't want to put any, I just don't like banging on my suspension. So use a this one fits. This is a standard ball joint separator. A Pitman arm puller is going to be too big. Here, I don't think you got, I didn't even bother, because the Pitman arm puller is going to be too big. There's your ball joint separator. So I mean, a tie rod end separator. It's aptly termed as a tie rod end separator. So use a tie rod end separator. Fits on there, no problem. Remove your tie rod end. And here you see is the tie rod end that's been removed, and that tie rod end is still in serviceable condition. So I didn't lose any alignment there, because I did not have to loosen up the threads. I just removed it from the steering knuckle. Let's see if we can get the, and then once you remove your tie rod end, you'll use a pickle fork to separate your ball joint from, this is the bore that the ball joint goes in. Separate it with a pickle fork. I used a small pickle fork, but it fit. Here it is. Here's the ball joint. All right, it fit right there. See, and I was able to extract the. Let's get that there. I was able to extract the ball joint with that, no problem. And also, when you're using the pickle fork to separate it, you're going to destroy your boot. So you got to replace the ball joint anyway at that point, or get a new boot. Now here, once you removed your ball joint, you're going to use I should mention, you want to make sure you put a jack underneath your suspension. Here you can see underneath that control arm. Now, you could use a spring compressor, and yeah, I guess it's a little bit safer, but with the jack, it's faster. This is about how long do you want to spend working on a car. And no, I'm not sacrificing safety for speed here. I'm using caution. The jack is securely underneath there, and as long as that jack can't tip over, it's actually perfectly safe. And it can. It's not going to tip over. It's solid. It's there. I'm aware of it. I'm not putting stresses that could potentially make that jack fall over. You have to be aware of these things. As you can see, I have the car jacked up. The rear wheels are chocked. Yes, I'm just on a hydraulic jack. I don't have any jack stands. But worst case scenario, if that hydraulic jack, that floor jack, were to fail, all it would do is go straight down. I have it positioned so it's not going to spit out, because I have the rear wheels chocked. So the worst thing that could possibly happen here is the car would just go down, the other side wheel is still on. The jack itself, the floor jack, Mustang has a relatively low clearance, so even when that jack's all the way down, the suspension wouldn't even touch the ground. It wouldn't hurt the car or anything. So there is no dangers here. And also, jacks don't like when they fail, they don't just like go down instantly. They usually go down kind of slow. And even if it did go down instantly, you're aware of it. You know what I mean? And just use caution. And remember, when you're under the car, if you always think that it's possible, it could go down, even with jack stands. Use caution. But anyway, it's a relatively safe way to do it with a floor jack underneath there, and far faster than using a spring compressor, because you put a McPherson spring compressor, you need two of them, one on each side. This one you can actually use a spring compressor, and I have one that goes in the middle of the spring, because you do have this hole in the lower control arm, and you don't, and this isn't a McPherson strut style suspension. The spring obviously is not over a shock, so you could use an internal spring compressor. So it's one spring compressor, so it's not that bad, but it still takes more time than just doing it this way. Okay, so there you go. A couple of hints here to get to this point is to note that you don't have to lower the control arm all the way down. It could go down further than it is right now. I don't like the idea, because I'm worried, because the spring is starting to arc, and I don't want that spring to spit out. My concern is if I go too far down, the spring might spit out, and I don't want to disturb the seat either on that spring. You can see it's a rubber seat. It's kind of deteriorated. The car's a 2002. It's 18 years old. Leave well enough alone. I don't want to disturb the bedding on that spring. It has to be positioned exactly the way when you put it back together. If you do take the spring out, you got to make sure you put it in the exact same orientation. And you're going to disturb that bedding. It might not be exactly the same. Better off not taking that spring out, or if you don't have to. I'd rather have it bearing against the leave some pressure bearing against the control arm. Because again, the point here is, I don't want to have to get the suspension realigned. It's just another thing you got to do. My alignment was fine, and I'm just replacing a ball joint for preemptive measures. So if anything, definitely my alignment when I'm done with this job will actually be closer to factory specs, because anywhere of the original ball joint will be eliminated, and it should actually be, the alignment will actually be better. Plus, if I do notice something's up with my alignment, obviously I'll take it and get it aligned, but it's unlikely. More than likely, the car won't need an alignment after this. Now, let me just show you here. I have this wrench on there. I left the socket on so I'd have it when I go to remove it. I have this wrench on here. It was simply just so I had a little more leverage when I was breaking that. The nut free on the old ball joint. They are on there with a considerable amount of torque, and they have a lock nut on them, the factory one, that is. And it, a little rust, and being 18 years old, so it does take some considerable amount of force, breakaway torque to get it free. And I don't want to put all that strain on the steering lock. So hence this wrench was put on there, with a lug nut just to hold it in place, so I would alleviate the strain on the suspension. Here, I did loosen up the sway bar link. Again, here's the boss where the tie rod end went into. There's the removed tie rod end. Rusty looking, but still in good shape. Now this tie rod end also is a factory tie rod end, so it has no grease fitting, but I'm not going to replace it because the boot is still okay. The boot's not ripped, right? That's just a little tear on the lip, but the boot itself is not torn, so I'm leaving that in. It's not worn. Can't be greased, but it is what it is. Now the sway bar link, That may not have even had been loosened up. I loosened it up to give myself a little extra play, a little less strain on the sway bar to let me lower it down a little easier. But as I said, I don't have to lower it down all the way. Now, as you can see, at this position, the steering knuckle will not fit over the ball joint stud. It's too low. You don't have to lower the tie rod end. All you need to do is push up on the shock absorber. It takes a little bit of effort, and I'm not going to be able to do it in the position I'm in. It takes two hands. You can push the strut up. It's a gas charged strut. You can push it up enough to clear the ball joint stud, and then lower it back down on it. You don't have to load the control arm that far. You can maintain tension on the spring. And actually, this setup isn't that dangerous because I've only loosened up that sway bar link, and the sway bar prevents the control arm from going down all the way as well. I'm not crazy about putting that much strain on the sway bar, hence the jack. So, and also it's just safer. So there you go. That's all you need to do. That's what you have to do to get the ball joint, access the ball joint so you can remove it. Now, removing it, I'll just go into that quickly. You wire your, put this back in position here. Oops, get rid of that. Put that socket back on. I accidentally pulled the socket off. It's just, like I said, that socket I just have, oops. That socket there I just have on so I don't have to look for it when I go to take the wrench off. So I'm just bringing this over, hooking this back out of the way. Now, there you go. That's hooked out of the way. Now, here, to remove the ball joint, you need to get a ball joint press. Buy one or rent one. It's up to you. If you don't replace ball joints regularly, you're better off just renting it. As a matter of fact, this is a loaner. I just need to leave a deposit, and that's that. So there's no cost. As you can see, you have enough room to get your ball joint press on. I'm not going to bother putting the, obviously you need to put the adapters, as you can see there are some adapters here, so forth. Anyway, you put the adapters on there. There's the adapter I actually used for the top. You put the adapters on there and press the ball joint out. You put a different set of adapters in there, to press the ball joint back in. When you're pressing it out, the adapter fits against the body of the ball joint, and the lower adapter fits over the ball joint, and you press it down. When you press it back in, the adapter fits over the body of the ball joint on top and against the body of the ball joint on the bottom, and you press it in. It's that simple, but it is easier said than done. With the press, it is a pain. It takes a lot of force to remove it, and be sure that you have everything perfectly centered. If your force isn't perfectly acting down, you're going to get binding, and it's going to make it really tough. So be cautious when you get under strain. Double check it. Make sure everything is right. Make sure that your adapters are not pressing against something you don't want them to press against, and make sure everything is aligned right, and you'll be able to do it. Another caveat is when you're renting a ball joint or borrowing, or getting a loaner ball joint, you're likely to get a ball joint press. You're likely to get one like I got. And as you can see, I don't know, we can move the camera further away. This press is sprung, and that just makes it more fun because it's hard to get it aligned perfectly straight when you have a tool that's out of alignment, it's not straight. And because of the forces that are involved, it's not surprising that it be sprung, because, you know, some ball joints are really, really tough to remove, and who knows, the previous guy that used it before me wasn't that good a mechanic, and he didn't apply it right and just used brute force and wound up springing this clamp. It made it more difficult, but it's still doable. It's just a pain. And yes, something you should check when you do get a ball joint press. Check to see if it's sprung. I did check for that. I did note that it was sprung, but you know what? There was no other place that had one available, so I just had to make do with this one. But anyway, that's just another word of advice. Try to check that when you rent the tool. That this, you know, you have to, it comes with the threaded rod disassembled. Put it in the ball joint press before you rent it, and check to make sure that it is aligned properly. Your life will be a lot easier if they have, you know, if they have another one you can get instead of that one. Get the one that's straight. Obviously, your life will be easier. All right, so that's it basically. All at this point that has to be done, and I'm not going to go into it, is you just need to reassemble the car. Just put it back together, and that's that. Again, all your alignment will be exactly the same as it was before, because the alignment wasn't, you know, it didn't change any adjustments. I just basically, doing it with this technique, I didn't remove the strut. Strut's still on the knuckle. The only things that were removed were the ball joint, and as far as the suspension is concerned, I mean, obviously the caliper. But so we would have access. You have to take the caliper. The only reason why is the hose isn't long enough. You know, it wouldn't allow you to swing the steering knuckle out of the way to give you clearance for work. But the only two things that suspension wise that had to actually be removed was the ball joint, which obviously is what we want, and the tie rod end. And that's it. And I loosened up the sway bar link, but that's not necessarily necessary to do. I did it because my sway bar link wasn't rusted too badly, and I was able to loosen up. But if I wasn't able to loosen that up, I would have attempted to do it without loosening that, and just would have then had to push this strut with a little more, you know, a little bit higher up. And obviously, the higher you push it, the more effort it's going to take. So I loosened it enough so that it made it easy to take that down. And as you can see, I even loosened it more than I had to, because you can see there's a gap there. So it, and also leaving it on there, you know, is a good thing, because it's an extra safety. So there you go. That's it. Ball joint can be done while it's in the car. The hardest part about this whole job, as in any ball joint job, is unless they're bolted in, but any pressing ball joint is pressing it out and pressing it in while it's in the car. But, you know, I mean, what's your option? Remove the control arm. You know what I mean? In order to remove the control arm, you got to deal with your bushings. You got to remove your spring. It's more work. You know, and you almost certainly are going to need to get it aligned after you're done. So, it's, you know, it's your call. But I would say, there's no doubt about it. If you're a somewhat skilled mechanic, it's going to be faster to press a new ball joint in, provided you have a ball joint press. You can't do it without a ball joint press. It's the only way it's going to happen. Banging on it with a hammer or heating it up with a torch, forget about it. And you know, it's never good to put heat to a suspension anyway. Yeah, you know, I mean, it just if you're gonna press it out, you need a ball joint press. You know, it's the only way to do it. All right, there you go. Tried to keep this video short. Kind of had a bunch of segues there. I may actually make a more comprehensive video later when I do the other side. But this is just basically to show you how to remove your ball joint, that it can be done. You see that it's in a position that you can remove the ball joint in this position, and that's what this video is all about, to show you that it can be done, and proof positive is right here. Shows you that you have the clearance to do it. All right, that's it.